Welcome to Handicap Movers and Shakers episode 6, series of videos where I take you through my thoughts on the newly released official BHA ratings. They come out every Tuesday morning. And this is just my thoughts on horses that remain well handicapped, or indeed horses that are now not so well handicapped. That's equally important. We'll follow the usual format of horses going up, going down, and then non-movers and new entries. So starting with the horses going up in the handicap, and we have to go all the way back to Sandown the Sunday before last, remembering that these marks run from a Sunday to a Saturday. So if you're excited to hear what a horse that ran at Cheltenham on Sunday, for example, has got, you do have to wait until next Tuesday for those revised marks. But at Sandown, Sunday before last, the Patron won a novice chase for Gary and Jamie Moore and was an impressive winner. He won by 10 lengths. That's earned him a rise of £11, up from 122 to 133. And I think that might just stop him in his tracks. He did pull clear by 10 lengths from the 134 rated Blow Your Wad, but he was getting plenty of weight from him. Le Patron had the run of the race up in front, whereas Blow Your Wad was settled towards the rear of a small field under Stan Shepherd. It was his first time over fences. I think they were very keen to get a clear round with this horse, and quite simply Blow Your Wad could never get into it. Le Patron had the run of the race up the front. He scooted clear and was never really a contest. So as such, I think this is a form line that's dangerous to trust literally. Certainly off 133, Le Patron is a horse that I would be keen to oppose. The one thing you might say is that Gary Moore's team are not in great form. He's operating at just 9% currently, struggling for winners, although he did have two on Monday at Fontwell, sorry. But maybe if Le Patron can be showing this level of form when the yard is perhaps under a cloud, he might be able to step it up a little bit when they come into good health, which they will no doubt do at some point during this season. But for me, I just thought £11 in a race of that nature, it's a dangerous form line, and I'd be keen to oppose Le Patron in a handicap next time. Also getting a big rise was Lingfield winner Oxygen, who won for Venetia Williams and Charlie Deutsch. He's been raised £8, but he's still only up to 111. He won off a very lowly mark on his first chase start. Jumped beautifully, clearly thrived on the testing conditions at Lingfield, as indeed Venetia's horses do very often. I'm recording this on a Tuesday afternoon, and she's already had a winner at Lingfield today. He was only a 2-length winner, but he won with any amount in hand. He had the race one going to the last. Charlie Deutsch powered down, keen not to give him a hard ride, which is something Charlie Deutsch always seems very keen to do. And actually the runner-up switched from his right-hand side to his left-hand side up the run-in, and I'm not sure Charlie was entirely aware he was there when he saw him coming. A little bit panic stations for a brief moment, gave Oxygen a couple of kicks with his legs, never went to his stick once, but the change of gear that Oxygen found, he sprinted for 2 or 3 strides, pulled out those couple of lengths that were required, and was a very easy winner. I have absolutely no doubt that a mark of 111 has got nowhere near Oxygen's full potential. He's sure to win again, particularly going back to Lingfield on soft ground, heavy ground. He's a horse that needs to go into your tracker, and you should most certainly follow him until he appears to have hit his limit. Jumping forward now, through the week, there was not an awful lot that went up that interests me, but jumping forward to Cheltenham this weekend, and Triple Trade ran out the winner of the handicap chase over 2 miles there. He's gone up £6 to a mark of 136. He was running off 130 at the weekend. Now, he only won by 3/4 of a length, and he needed the entire length of the run-in and the hill to get there. But just 2 strides past the post, that distance was more like 1.5 lengths. I think this is his absolute bare minimum trip. And I think on slightly softer ground and over a little bit further, he's still got scope off this mark of 136. It's the second time he's run well at Cheltenham now. It's clearly a course that suits him and a track that suits him, the stiff finish. And it's worth noting that racing will move to the new course for the next couple of meetings. That new course with a longer run-in certainly puts more emphasis on stamina. So Triple Trade, if he goes back to Cheltenham at the December meeting, would certainly be a horse firmly on my radar. Despite going up £6, I think he's got more yet to give. Really good jumper, very measured. That stands you in good stead in these handicap chases, and he's a horse that's still on my radar, in my tracker going forward this winter. The Tizzards enjoyed less luck with JPR One, who was going to run out a very ready winner of the Arkle trial chase before coming down at the last fence. Unfortunately, the way the handicapping works, the handicapper can handicap them off anything from the second last. So if you'd have come down at the third last, they'd have been okay. But unfortunately, the second last, first, and the last, which is where he came down, the handicapper can assess him. He's given him an £11 rise up to 145. Now, that will cause, I'm sure, a lot of uproar on social media, and you've got to feel sorry for JP Romans and fellow connections, because you're going to get £11 rise and you're not going to get any reward. But the simple fact of the matter is he deserves every single pound of that £11 rise as far as I'm concerned. He was going to beat En Public, who was rated 138. He's gone up £1 to 139. He was going to beat him by comfortably more than 6 or 7 lengths. There's no doubt about that. So arguably a mark of 145, if he were in a handicap, is still a workable mark. He's lightly raced. That was just his 10th or 9th lifetime start. And I think he's a horse going places. I don't think his handicap mark will particularly be a problem at the moment. I would be certain they'll keep him to graded contests, maybe the Wayward Lad, and then on to the Kingmaker. He's a horse that's very smart, and if he can find a little bit more improvement, he's not going to put him an awful lot further away from the Arkle picture. So 145 now. Facile Vega has got a mark of 155. Marine National has got a mark of 158. This Tizard horse is lightly raced. Has still got progress yet. I don't think he's quite good enough to beat those two aforementioned horses, but I see nothing in the UK that will come and match him over 2 miles. And given that he jumped so well round Cheltenham until that final fence fall, he must have every chance of getting in the shake-up come the Arkle in March. Impose Toi, which is stand out in French, certainly did stand out when winning on Saturday. He's up now £10 to a mark of 131, but he pricked his ears all the way up the run and he wasn't doing a tap in front. That was his first start of the season. Be very unusual if Nicky Henderson couldn't find some improvement from a first start to a second start with one of his smart horses. He's already shown he'll stay further. He won over 2 mile 5 at Ludlow at the back end of last year. He's certainly got another handicap in him off this revised mark, maybe even another couple. Would be no surprise to me if they keep him to 2 miles through the winter and then look to target the Coral Cup, for which he's 14 to 1 at the Cheltenham Festival, or indeed the Martin Pipe. And it is only the fact that those 2 races are over similar trips for similar graded horses that stops me having an anti-post punt in the Coral Trophy. I think this is a really smart horse. I loved how he went through the race, and JP McManus obviously likes winners at the Cheltenham Festival in the handicaps. This is sure to be on the raiding team for Cheltenham in March. Impose Toi will certainly win again this winter. Another with a big rise was the Paddy Power Gold Cup winner, Stagestar. Now he's gone up £11 to a mark of 166. That mark is of no interest or consequence with regards to is he well handicapped or not, because he has most certainly taken himself out of handicaps now. But I thought it was interesting just in context of the Ryanair picture. Won by Envoy Alain last year, who's rated 164. I think he officially ran to 163 to win the Ryanair last year. And you then look at the Ryanair picture, it's a very light picture. Shishkin placed last year, he's certainly not going to run in that. He'll be going Gold Cup or perhaps missing Cheltenham completely and going to Aintree for the Broadway Boy. And Envoy Alain. That's about the sum of it. Personally, I've got big hopes for Banbridge, but he's not been out yet. And he will have a little bit to find on official ratings. But 166 sets a good target. And it's only really a question of whether Allaho can come back to his best. I think his return at Cork told you nothing other than he's fit and healthy. He simply had a canter round, was never really put under any pressure, and we'll know more about him come Christmas. But if you're a Stagestar fan, mark of 166 gives him every right to be right there come the death in the Ryanair. If you're a fan of backing 4 to 1 each way, then now's your chance to take it, because if Allaho comes out and disappoints over Christmas, of which there is every chance, he's had one run, no one can tell you yet that Allaho is back or not until he has to go into the red. That's when we're going to find out about him. If he bombs out over Christmas, Stagestar will be a short price favourite, perhaps for just standing in his box, because there's every chance he'll go straight to Cheltenham for the festival. So if you're a fan of Stagestar, take the 4-1 now, because I don't think he'll get bigger and he might well get a bit shorter. Also winning at Cheltenham on the Saturday in the novice chase was Broadway Boy. Now he's gone up £9 to a mark of 146. It's a big rise, but I thought that still makes him a well-handicapped horse if connections were tempted to tip him as a novice into a handicap staying chase. To put it into context, he would have to give £9 to We've All Been Caught, who's rated 135 and was 20 lengths further behind him. Well, I'm not sure about you, but if I was offered odds on Broadway Boy beating We've All Been Caught on over course and distance in a handicap, given the same conditions, I would be with Broadway Boy every single day of the week. I think a mark of 146 underestimates him. I said yesterday on the Monday review that if the ground came up soft at Cheltenham for the Brown Advisory Chase, he is not a back marker. They've won it with a similar type before in Black Lion, and I think a mark of 146 underestimates this horse's ability. So I'd be interested to see if the Twiston Davis team, who are not adverse to thinking outside the box, were to chuck this horse into a staying handicap chase through the middle of the winter when he's got his preferred soft ground. Moving on to horses going down in the handicap now, and moving to Lilith for the Honeyball team. Now, she is all about stamina and on soft ground, and 2 mile 4 round Kempton last time was just not suitable at all. It wasn't enough of a stamina test, and the ground was certainly too lively for her to be at her best. It was her seasonal return, and she just looked to lead the run, so she will stay on all day long. Soft ground is ideal for her. She's been dropped a single pound back to 118, which is her last winning mark, and Lilith is a horse to keep on your radar. She's a mare that's got her plenty of talent in her own grade, and Anthony Honeyball does well with mares himself. She'll win a mares contest at some point this winter, that is for sure. From the Paddy Power Gold Cup, the two principals that came down in the handicap were Fugitif, who finished 4th and perhaps just did a bit too much in first-time cheek pieces, but he's down £2 now to a mark of 151. He's amongst the entries for the December Gold Cup. That would be on the new course with more stamina, a slightly longer run in a slightly less sharp track, which at 18 hands would appear to me to suit him better. It would also be very surprising if Richard Hobson, good trainer though he is able to get a horse of this size fit and fully fit first time up. I think there's perhaps a bit of improvement to come in this. I think he did run a bit keen in the first time cheek pieces, and if that run takes the edge off him, Fugitif should certainly be on the radar for the December Gold Cup. As indeed should Ridoto, who surprised me. I wasn't sure that he would go as well as he did for Freddie Ginger. Was right there turning in and actually got a bit hampered. Didn't cost him a winning chance, but he might well have got a little bit closer without that. He's a horse as well that stays well at this trip, so the new course might well suit him as well. He's actually won over the new course in January last year. He's down £1 to a mark of 143. Now that you know that Freddie Ginger gets on with him, provided his £5 claim is still intact come December, he must also be of interest for the December Gold Cup back over that 2 mile 4 trip at Cheltenham. And then to finish with a few non-movers and a few more than usual this week. Cyclop ran at Sandown in the Veterans Chase over 3 miles. The ground perhaps wasn't quite testing enough for him, and he certainly stays further than 3 miles, but he rallied away at the death. Off a mark of 134, he's had very little respite from the handicapper in recent times, but he's certainly got a win in him in these veteran chases off this mark, particularly if the rain comes back at Sandown, stiff stamina test, maybe even a bit further than 3 miles for some of these veteran races. So Cyclop for the David Dennis team, off his mark of 134, to me remains a horse of interest on that mark. Also still of interest on his unchanged mark of 120 is Klitschko. Now he was held up off the pace on his seasonal return at Plumpton. Made a mistake at a crucial time just as the pace was lifting, and could never really get back into it. But that was his first run of the season. I think he might even be a bit better back on better ground. So Klitschko is a horse that's still on my radar off his mark of 120 for Alan King. Owned by JPR One, as is Sassified, who ran at Taunton in a conditional jockeys race for Elizabeth Gale. Elizabeth Gale is a jockey I got plenty of time for. She claims £10 for Philip Hobbs and Johnson White. Is absolute thunderous value for that £10. But she maybe had him a little bit far back around Taunton, a sharp track, and he was dropping back to 2 miles, having done most of his winning over 2 mile 2 and 2 mile 3. He stays on a marker 93. I think now that Elizabeth Gale's had a feel of him and had a ride, she might well be the girl to win on him again. And if he goes back up in trip, 2 mile 2, 2 mile 3, maybe even a little bit further, I think Sassified is still well handicapped off his mark of 93. And to finish with 2 new entries for slightly different reasons. First of all, the Emma Lavelle trained Classic King arrives into the ratings on a mark of 124. Now, whether that is well handicapped or not, I would certainly be keen to see him in a handicap before making a judgment, but I thought it was interesting from the point of a couple of horses that he's had in and around him. So he beat Benny Nahar Road of Paul Nicholls 10 lengths at Wincanton. And that horse is interesting, given that Willmount, who was being well talked about for Nicky Henderson and Mr. Harris, beat the same horse, Benny Nahar Road, by 13 lengths at Newbury. So Classical King, 124. Willmount beat the same sort of yardstick by 3 or 4 lengths more. Just gives you a little idea as to where Willmount ran on his hurdle debut. Classic King also finished second behind Queen's Gamble. So you can get a line on her, what she achieved on her win this season, to see where she stacks up into the mare's novice ranks. I think, given that she'll stay further than the 2 miles she won over, defeating Classical King, who the official handicapper, who know these things, thinks is 124. I think she's well en route to being in the shake-up for the David Nicholson mare's novice hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival. And then a horse who enters on a handicap mark of 124, and I just think he's simply well handicapped of his own accord, is the Kim Bailey trained El Rio. He was disappointing on his seasonal return at Kempton. He dropped out tamely, having set quite hard fractions. He's quite a keen, free-going horse. But this was his first run of the season. I wonder whether he was perhaps fully tuned up, for all that Kim Bailey does have his horses in good order. But just simply off his Ascot win last year, he absolutely hammered Miles from Wicklow, who's 117. He beat him by 11 lengths. The 4th horse, James's Jet, was 20-something lengths behind, absolutely convincingly put in his place, and he's won off a mark of 103 on his handicap debut. I think El Rio, with the benefit of that run behind him, can certainly be found opportunities in handicaps off a mark of 124. So that concludes a slightly shorter handicap movers and shakers for episode 6. If in this shortened version I've missed something that you were hoping I would talk about, or if you want to gleefully point out I've missed something, do drop a message in the comments below. Contact me on X and we can have a discussion about it. In the meantime, if there's anything you'd like to know about my thoughts on handicapping, drop me a message and I'll see if I can answer that. As ever, please do hit a subscribe if you're not already. Tell your friends, hit a like on this video, and I'll see you later this week.